and that we have so many Christians that are falling away. We have more Christians falling away than we do growth. That's according to Barna statistics. You know, we've even had 17% loss just in the last 10 years.
Is it loss of Christians, or just not as many people becoming Christians?
People who profess their faith are less in numbers now, and that has been successfully true over the last 50 years. We've been losing ground rather than gaining ground, despite the numbers on the mission field, where there are more gaining ground than we are here. And isn't that a sobering statistic? So why do you think that's happening? Why aren't we birthing the babies?
We're not ready.
We're not ready. We're not ready to do it, are we? We're not ready to do it.
We're definitely not doing it.
We're not doing it. Okay. So just on Sunday, you know, Pastor said, you know, think of people by name that you are praying, caring for, and you're sharing Christ with. How many of you can think of 5 people right now in your sphere of influence that you are praying and caring and sharing Christ with? Good. That's great. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you do have that. But you see how important that is to, you know, to our walk with the Lord? That we literally won't grow unless we are all about that, of glorifying Christ. Okay. So there is a biblical readiness standard. It's probably one of the best kept secrets in the Christian church today. Because if we can convince people that there's no standard, even though the Bible is very clear what that standard is, but if we can convince people that there's no standard, then they feel better, don't they? Oh, we feel more comfortable. Oh, we don't have to do that. Oh no, let's forget about evangelism. We don't have to do that. That's an option. We give all sorts of excuses, don't we, for that, of not living out what Jesus said. Go and make disciples. End of discussion. That is not, it's a command, it is not a choice. He said, go.
And there's so many churches that don't even know the plan of salvation.
They don't. They don't. And that's why, remember how we talked about at 9/11? So many of the Christian radio broadcasters could not give a biblical worldview to what had just happened. And then they lost their audiences left and right because they were not in a position to give a biblical worldview and in context for their listening audience of Christians, supposedly. You know, that's a sad state of affairs, isn't it? It really is. So what do we need to be doing? What did Nehemiah do? What did Nehemiah do that was right?
He was prepared.
He was prepared, but
he got his leaders
He got his leaders together.
Trained them.
He got his leaders together, and he trained them. And what else did he do?
He found a source of help.
He found help. He found resources.
Assess the wall.
He assessed the wall. The first thing he did is he assessed the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so have we just assessed the problem?
Yeah.
Okay, so we know that we got a problem, right? We got a problem in our own spiritual lives that we're not replicating, so many of us. We've got a problem in our greater church that we're not birthing the babies as much as we need to.
You said the word a little while ago, comfortable.
Comfortable.
We're too comfortable.
Yes.
And we want to be comfortable. We don't want to be uncomfortable.
Right.
We need to pray that God would make us uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable, and the number one excuse given for not replicating our faith, you know what that is? I'm too busy. I am too busy. What are we too busy over that we profess to the Lord and we don't do that?
A lot of people don't believe that they could do it. They are afraid of other people.
They're afraid of people. Relationally, they're afraid of other people.
Yeah.
And I do believe also that they haven't been taught some of the skills that anyone can do. Is evangelism for every person? Is every person called to reach out to share the gospel? Everybody's called to share the gospel. But not everyone is an evangelist. And sometimes I think Christians think, well, I don't have the gift of evangelism, so I don't need to share my faith. That's not what the Bible says. All the gifts are brought together for kingdom expansion. Okay, so what Nehemiah did, his main objectives, the Nehemiah type of objectives that our Ready Church biblical training is he assessed their own personal situation. He assessed the walls, like we are doing right now. We're assessing our church walls. And he called in the experts, and then he drafted a plan with agreements with these leaders, right? You remember the story. And then what did he do? He got everybody prepared to be able to do their job with the right tools. And then they proceeded to do what? Do you remember what they did once they got started? Well, they prayed, but you remember what happened right after that? Nehemiah was about ready to tear out his hair. You remember what they did? They reneged on their agreement. They had committed, and then they stopped doing the work. And he's like, excuse me, but you put your name to that agreement, and you gave your word that you would do that, and you are not following through. Okay, well then they were convicted, and so they got back to work again. And then what do you suppose happened? They did it again. 3 times they walked away from their commitment before the wall was actually built. And then what did they do at the final analysis? They celebrated because they were actually able to get the walls rebuilt. What a task. We need to learn from that. Do you think that there will be times that we will see people around us who have committed to do something and then they fall short or they don't fulfill their commitments? Yeah. So what are we supposed to do? What did Nehemiah did? What did he do?
He reminded them.
He reminded them, he held them accountable. He held them accountable. They had made a commitment. They reneged on their commitment, and he reminded them that they had done this. And it shamed them, didn't it? It made them feel convicted. And then they got at it again, and they did get it done. So we can take a page out of that book, right?
Yep.
As there's going to be times as we're doing this that people are going to let us down, that things are going to just seem like they're not going well, but what do? What did Nehemiah do? You get up and you do it again, right? You go for it, you keep on persevering. Kind of like Churchill, you know, you never, never, never give up. Okay, so let's take a look at the Ready Church Biblical Readiness Assessment, and let's try to go through that, you know, as quickly as you can here. Karen, if you just kind of pass that out. This one now, you're going to hand back into Karen. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to have a composite of this particular church so that you can get kind of an idea of what you think the readiness level is of this church. Oh, scary. Some are like Karen and Mike and Steve and I and Mike, you know, we've just only been here a much shorter period of time, months, you know, for us. How long have you been here?
A year.
A year.
And 3 or 4
So we're the newbies. We're the newbies. And so when you're doing this assessment, for those of you that have been here the longest, you know, it'll probably be easier for you to do that assessment than for those of us that have just, you know, arrived on the shore. Or some are still in the boat, I don't know. But this assessment is really key because that was the first thing that Nehemiah did, didn't he? He assessed the walls. And so when we take a hard look realistically at where the church is, why is that important to do on the front end of something like this?
You know how much work you gotta do.
Your starting point.
You know what your starting point is, and then also, though, it helps you measure the growth. Because if you never knew where you started from, then when you finally get to where you think you ought to be, you know, you can look back and say, oh, we've grown this far. Just like Steve said, remember how he started out Ready Christian, he was challenged, and now he's up to replicating? Well, that's come over a period of time where he's continually, you know, just continually strengthened those areas. Same way with the church. So